Welcome to this week's edition of the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. I am the Construction CPA, Lisa Raish. We are dropping the hammer on cash flow problems so you can build things that matter. So this week's topic is going to be why cash flow feels tight when you are busy with work. And chronic problem across the board. This is probably the number one complaint that we get from clients when they reach out to us. So figured, why not? Let's just tackle this one straight ahead. So we're on to new topic this month. So we're going to be talking about cash flow, billing, and collections, right? So that's going to be the general kind of overhead theme for the month, the beginning of this month and for the next 3-4 weeks. All right. So let's just kind of think a little bit about, right? We're in a fresh year, right? We're into the second month now. For many of you, while it may not be busy, some of you in the colder parts of the country probably are working very little, right? And so it's the beginning of the year. You maybe aren't working as much as you do in the warmer months, so cash might feel a little tight. People might be slow to pay. Some of your own invoices and bills that you need to pay are piling up. Your issues tend to snowball. You're waiting for that first thaw to get out so you can get out and work. So again, let's talk about cash flow, right? That is one of the things we talk about a lot on here because it is a chronic problem across the board in the industry. So have you ever looked at your schedule, what you forecasted the work that you've got, coming up, and you can see it, right? You can see how busy you're going to be through the spring and into the summer. But it seems to be the same thing every year. You look at your schedule, but yet, the cash, you're still stressed out about cash. Why? Because you may not have a lot right now. And you're waiting for things to pick up. You're waiting for the weather to break, the season to get warmer, right? So let's kind of talk about that kind of cyclical problem that tends to happen a lot in construction. Now, I know a lot of you are not all in colder climates but even in the warmer climates, you tend to see a little bit of a slowdown in December, January, February. People are coming out of the holidays, not, interested in spending any budget yet, that kind of a thing. So while you might be in a warmer climate, it may not be as busy as it is at other times of the year. So we're going to talk about cash flow because I love to talk about cash flow, right? And so it's cash flow. It seems tight, even though you're busy. There's work coming in, like you're doing the work. The money's coming in, the money's going out. The money's coming in, the money's going out. But what is actually causing the problem? That feeling of I don't have any cash. So just drop in the chat. Let me know if your cash flow is tighter right now than it usually is. Let's see if we can help you with that. All right. So why, again, why does cash flow matter? Shocking, I know, right? But these are, it's really the lifeblood of your business. So for many of you, sadly, being busy doesn't actually mean that you have cash in the bank. Sadly, for a lot of you, it just means you're busier, right? Or the money just comes in and goes back out faster. And so it just becomes really, really cyclical. People are slow to pay you. You're slow to pay people. You're billing, delaying on billings, or things are happening. You're getting time gaps between when the work is done, when it is invoiced, when it is collected, right? And in some cases, those gaps can start to get bigger and bigger, or the gaps, they flow over each other. But what happens is at some point you're going to have a slow, which a lot of times is at this time of the year, and the frenetic pace of that busy season catches up with you. And now you're early in the year and your cash is tight, right? So your cash flow is going to affect how you're able to make payroll every week, how you can actually pay your vendors, how you make your decisions moving forward, right? What kind of work are you going to do or not going to do? What work are you going to take? We tend to see that people take work on for the cash flow, but it might not be the best work for them. And so in some cases, wanting the cash flow is more of a challenge than actually not having the cash, right? Taking on the work that they really shouldn't be taking, right? So, and you really need to start to understand why your cash feels tight. But it does take time. It takes time to fix it. So it doesn't happen overnight. But again, your cash flow is going to be the lifeblood of your business. So a lot of times we see cash flow problems are a combination of different things, and it's typically various levels of timing and systems, and it's not a lack of work. So we see a lot of different things. And it's not, and I had a conversation with someone earlier this week. Their cash flow problem, from what I could tell, just from the general conversation we had, was it was going to be three or four different things that were kind of bundled up, all making the snowball bigger. And unfortunately, it was going to require kind of unwinding that snowball, pulling off like those three, four layers and getting them back down to a better place. Unfortunately, that's not something you can do overnight, but understanding that typically, whatever your challenges with your cash flow are, it is not going to be one thing. You've probably got four or five different things wrapped up in there, creating that problem. So you need to kind of attack each one of those things separately and then work on those to help improve your overall cash flow. So, what are some of the things that are going to create those cash flow challenges? So, time gaps. We talk a lot about that on here. It's your labor and your materials, right? Your labor. Most of your team members, your people who actually work for you, are getting paid every week. So they are getting paid long before you as a business are getting paid from your customers, right? So you create a timing gap there. In some cases, if you're asking for a deposit, your deposits aren't necessarily enough to fund up to the point where you're going to invoice next. So now you've created a gap there, right? So it's possible. So again, we're building one on top of the other. And this is just in general timing, right? So you're paying people every week. You didn't get enough money in the front end to pay everybody every week until you do that first invoice, right? So again, those are the kinds of things that you need to figure out how to fund, to fund that job, enough of it, right? Retainage is a big one, right? There's always, some sort of hold at the end that you need to wait for getting that hold back. Well, it takes longer to get the retainage back after the project is complete. Your expenses related to the project might be long gone. You've paid them all. Now you're just waiting to get paid. So again, you've got three very different things, timing gaps that have been potentially created over the life of your project, each one of those creating a problem of its own. And again, each one of them might be snowballed on top of the other, getting you to the end of that project. Next thing is going to be billing delays. Too often we see our clients, when they come to us, don't actually have a process around how they invoice clients. It's, oh, well, we invoice here or there, or, oh, we invoice here, or there's no follow up on the invoices once they've been sent out. So there's really no process. So again, what is it? It's timing and lack of process. There's lack of process around your invoicing. Um, you may have change orders. We see it all the time. It's super common. Are you in fact billing on the change orders in a timely fashion? Are you waiting? A project that's 6 months long, and you're waiting 3 months before you start invoicing out for change orders. Well, those change orders, you've incurred time for team members or subs, or you have incurred costs for materials, right? So you've got money that's gone out the door and you still haven't invoiced. Oh, and you still need to wait for that invoice to be paid. So again, right, you've created billing delays. The billing delays have created even wider timing gaps. And again, you're creating more and more cash flow problems. Or your progress billing doesn't actually match up with the pace of the job, which can be a challenge too. So you've only invoiced up to say 40%, but you're really 60% complete. Again, you haven't caught up with that. Now you're creating time delays and billing delays, and all the time gaps, all of that, again, get piled on top of each other and just make the snowball bigger. Slow pays and collection issues are always a problem. You're always going to get clients who take forever to pay you, right? So you might have some of your customers who consistently pay you late, or they only pay you after you send them 7 reminders, right? So again, now you have maybe some timing issues you created. Maybe you haven't been consistent on how you've invoiced out. Oh, and by the way, now the customer is going to take their time to pay you. So again, now you've paid your expenses here, and now you're not getting paid till out here, right? How far out is this, and how are you funding this in the interim? That's creating your cash flow problems. Many cases we see there's no consistent follow-up on invoices. So the next time that, someone actually follows up on the invoice is when they realize that it's 45 or 50 days past due and we really need the cash yesterday. And now we're chasing the customer up to get paid. So there really needs to be a process around that. How often you regularly invoice, what the cadence is for reminders out to the customer to get paid, ensure that you have done the actual submission of the invoicing correctly. A lot of times that's where we see challenges. If you do not submit your invoicing based on how the customer expects it to be done process wise on their side, it could delay it. So that could be a challenge as well. So you want to make sure you're aware of what their process is so you abide by it and you get paid in a timely fashion. But we know, again, in construction, it's certificates of insurance and W-9s and all of those things. So you want to make sure that in order to, in fact, get paid, again, you're abiding by the customer's process, especially if you're B2B. You want to make sure that you are, in fact, submitting your invoices to get paid around what their process is so you do get paid in a timely fashion. You don't want a payment to be held because, again, you didn't follow their process in order to get that invoice paid. And your invoice, because you have no process around how you are following up on the invoices, your receivable number just quietly gets bigger and bigger and bigger every month, again, with no follow-up, right? And so we're waiting and waiting and waiting. We're not being proactive about going out there and kind of chasing up the funds that are due to us. Another thing that tends to be an issue is, of course, going to be your job costs and just overhead costs and pressures associated with those costs. So you could have a labor overrun. It does happen, right? You've kind of thought, you didn't think, in a specific way when you built out your pricing around this one labor, like this one function. And so, we've got labor overruns. We're paying our team every week. Oh, that's draining your cash. It's draining your cash as you move through the project, right? And now you're waiting longer and longer to get paid. And so, again, we're just making the snowball bigger. It's all little things all piled on top of each other, which are creating this overarching cash flow problem that you are having and that you're running into. And sadly, materials costs, they increase pretty regularly, in many cases unexpectedly. You may have bid on a project 6 months ago. Now you're ready to go. It's possible your materials costs have since gone up, right? How do you attack that? How do you handle when those things come up? What does that look like? Again, it's potentially more cash out the door. Again, you're still waiting to get paid. So it's all little attacks on your cash flow, all small little things, but they all build up over time. And then again, your overhead just keeps running regardless of if anybody pays you. So the overhead are going to be those costs that don't go away on a monthly basis. Just because you have no projects, those are the costs that show up regardless. And that's kind of what I call them. And that's really the best way to think about them. That's the rent for the office that you have, the insurances on all your trucks. Those things don't go away. Doesn't matter if you're working or not, or if you're in a cold climate and you don't work for 3 months in the winter. Those expenses don't go away, right? So those keep going, they keep running regardless of you actually getting paid for work. So those keep going. Well, you don't have a process around how you invoice. And so the invoices sometimes go out. And then you sometimes follow up on those invoices. And sometimes it takes 60, 90 days to get paid. And again, it's all of these little things, right? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what's creating your cash flow problem. It's typically not one thing, like this one magical thing. If we fix this thing, it'll save the world. No, it's all of those little things typically that are built all on top of each other and are creating that overarching cash flow problem. So you just need to work on those pieces, kind of peeling each layer of that onion back and getting back to a point where your cash is flowing a little bit more consistently. Again, it's never going to be a flat, especially in construction. But if we can, again, minimize the waves as much as possible and then get that time gap as close as you can possibly get, then again, you as the business are not funding your customers until they finally get a chance to pay you. So that's what we really that's the thing that we want to work on, is that gap and getting you from point A to point B, right? We want to get you over that big gap in between. So what are some of the things that you can do about your cash flow today, right? What are the things that the tips and takeaways for today or tomorrow, right? So first is you need to understand your timing, the timing of your cash. You need to know when your money is going out versus when it actually comes in. So it's not just, oh, well, this is where all the money is that's going out. No, you need to understand again where it's kind of ebbing and flowing and where all of those flux, how it sits week to week, and how that week to week can change depending on the season of the year, i.e., a warmer summertime where you're busier or a colder winter time where you're not as busy. Number two, invoice faster because it's more consistent, right? Cash flow will improve when your billing is disciplined. If you have no discipline around your billing, you just invoice whenever, your cash is going to show up just whenever. So you need to have whatever it is weekly. You invoice everybody on the 20th a month, whatever it is in your business, because it's going to fluctuate depending on the type of business you have. You want to make sure that you're religiously invoicing when you can. If it's milestone, that you invoice when the milestone truly comes up, not 3 weeks after the milestone. Or if it is monthly and you need to remit monthly, that you remit by the 20th or the 25th, whatever, typically whatever the GC's requirements are, so that you in fact can get that invoice out in a timely manner, right? Those are the things that you need to make sure that you have real process and procedure around. You need to stay on top of your receivables on a weekly basis. You don't look at receivables when cash is down to $20,000 or $30,000 and you know that's barely enough to make payroll on Friday. You want to see who owes you, who's now getting past 15 days, 20 days, 30 days, whatever it is, as you're working your way through the month before things get so out of hand. You want to know who owes you, right? So you don't want to, again, there's always going to be a gap and there's always going to be a little bit of a snowball there on everything you're doing, but you don't want to go from, your snowball, right? Your tiny snowball to a big gaping hole, in the earth where now suddenly you have a huge monstrous cash emergency. Too many times that's what happens. Too many emergencies. So again, there's probably always going to be some sort of cash flow snowball. Can we keep it as small as possible? Yes, because we're staying on top of our receivables and we're chasing up people on a weekly basis when they don't pay us. Number four, monitor your job costs during the project, right? This, again, is a big one. We talk about project costs all the time on here. You need to be visible. You need to have your expenses in these projects. You need to have visibility so you can, in fact, project the cash. Project the cash through the final 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks of a project. Not just, oh, is the project profitable? Yes, we want to be looking at profitability, but the other thing we want to look at is where are the dollars going out in regards to this project, so we know, again, 7 weeks out, oh no, we're going to run out of cash. What can we do in the interim? Those are the things that also will, contribute to your overall cash flow problems. It's going to be your timing. It's going to be that gap getting bigger and bigger. It's going to be those expenses, those overhead expenses coming every month, regardless of whether you've been paid. And oh, you have projects in there too. And if you don't know when those expenses are going to need to be paid related to that project, again, that is going to damage your cash flow as well, right? You have no idea where the cash is going out. You're trying to guess where it's going to come in. And again, we're more worried about whether the project is profitable, which we do want the project to be profitable. But if we don't understand where the cash is ebbing and flowing, the profitability is going to be moot because we may not have any money once we get to the end of the road because, it's profitable, but we spent all of our money and now we've got nothing and we're waiting to get paid. So again, a lot of different moving pieces and parts. It's not going to be one thing that's going to fix your cash flow problem. You'll probably have 4 or 5 of these things happening all at once. You need to deal with them all together. Your fifth thing that you should really be doing today is you've got to know what your monthly overhead number is, right? These are the dollars that don't go away, regardless of whether you have any more work. So what do you need to have in the bank to cover the monthly costs every month over the next 12 months. You've got to know what that number is. You don't want to be surprised when the overhead numbers, again, those keep coming in. We're worried about project costs. We're worried about cash flow for the project, but we're not really thinking about cash flow related to our operational costs, right? All of the things that show up every month, we've forgotten about that. We want to think about that too, because they're not going to go away. So just because you have more jobs than you know what to do with doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fix your cash flow, because all of the things we just talked about had nothing to do with whether or not you had too many jobs, not enough jobs, just the right amount of jobs, whether the jobs were profitable. This is just simply what you have in your possession at this time. It's timing. It's your process or lack thereof. It is tracking when the costs are going to come in. All of these have to do with your cash flow. Now, you throw on there projects that aren't profitable, that makes it far more worse. But these are all operational things that you need to think about when you're thinking about cash flow. And also, just because you're taking one more project for the cash flow doesn't mean it's a good project for you. It's in most cases just going to mask a cash flow problem you have for a longer period of time. It's actually not going to fix it. So you want to make sure that, the busy work doesn't fix your cash flow. It's strong processes around billing and collection and systems and mitigating that gap of the timing that is going to help with your cash flow. So, cash flow is going to feel tight because of timing gaps, billing delays, people who pay you slow, job cost overruns. That's going to go into it as well. Not just most people think, oh, my business is failing. No, you have a lot of just different things happening there that are causing this chaos in your business. These are the things that you need to look at and make improvements on, and it will help to improve your overall cash flow. So in 2 weeks, not next week, but in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about how to tighten up your billing and your collections, because many of you actually have zero process around this. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that so that we can help you to tighten up your cash flow processes. And again, we just want to we don't want that snowball to be a huge, monstrous one rolling down the hill. Might just keep it as small as possible so we can minimize our cash flow challenges. Follow us here on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the socials. We are at the Construction CPA at all. I look forward to seeing you here every week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you in 2 weeks.